You blinked.
Who do I have to kill to get a drink around here? You? Okay.
What's behind door number 2? He felt like Tarzan. There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. Reynardo asked himself why he changed course to confront Zenobia. He'd no idea. Sometimes he would just do things, and he could never figure out why he'd done them. Usually, they worked out. After all, he was a hero. The truth is, though, he wanted to see her, wasn't it? It had been a dozen years since Swordfu School. He'd followed every rumor about her, every scrap of news. Not that he still loved her. After all, she was his enemy. No, it was solely because, know your enemy. But it would be great to see her. Even if they faced off across sword points, as they'd done so many times at school. The world was a less interesting place without her. This was the nice part of town, but the ravens had been through here. They like to take shiny things home to their nests. He was practically sure he'd find something useful in one of these things. Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough. Couldn't do worse with Zenobia than he'd done with the core, could he? Hey, how do you tell if someone's far away? Or just really small? Reynardo wasn't entirely sure how he was going to capture Zenobia. She'd be expecting him. And he didn't have Lapino to cook up a clever plan. Why was it again that he hadn't got the core? Maybe because the results tended to be disastrous. These streets were familiar. The Swordfu School was closed now, but he had been down that street 1,000 times. He knew that pub. He knew that alley. He knew the alley behind it much too well. No wonder Zenobia had chosen to invade this island herself. I'll just have a dash, thought Reynardo. He hadn't noticed that path before. This chest contained blank passports from 15 countries. And something useful.
At this rate, the Imperial Army would run out of rations.
Reynardo slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek. How soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She vanished. And he suddenly noticed he couldn't move except his mouth. In fact, soon he couldn't keep his mouth shut. He told Zenobia everything. Skyripper, the Iblastone, even where the secret rebel base was, until he was hoarse. It was some kind of truth spell. A talky truth spell. She called her father by Farspeaker Toad and filled His Majesty in.
But why didn't he get the core?
Croaked the Farspeaker in something like His Majesty's croak. Because I missed you, darling. Reynardo grinned. He doesn't even know why, frowned Zenobia.
That makes no sense. It's a trap,
shouted the Emperor.
I'll meet you at the outpost, and I'll bring my interrogators.
If Reynardo came face to face with the Emperor, maybe he could assassinate him. But maybe it would be smarter and safer to turn Zenobia against her father.
What are you doing?
Asked Zenobia.
Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you?
He asked her. She shook her head. He told her. His Majesty wanted to bring the lost gods back. They could make him an eater of souls, an immortal. But to seal his bargain with them, he needed a sacrifice. Someone who truly loved him. She was stunned. Furious. You're lying. Under a truth spell? It's a trick. You can't prove that. Take me to the observatory, and I will. What kind of proof could you possibly have? She said as they landed on the Nexus. Your father ritually sacrificed a village, and he left witnesses? The scientists resurrected one. Well, it's not really alive, but it can talk. A true witness. She frowned. The dead can't lie. Well, I bet they could. They just don't have any reason to. She nodded grimly. You go on ahead. I don't want the Ravens to see me.
Oh, they really ought to put a railing on this thing, he thought.
Couldn't find high-quality ore like this just anywhere. Just anywhere. With chests. Not everyone knew how to use magical gems. Of course, not everyone had magical gem gauntlets like he did. caught up with him. Don't you think I'd know if my father wanted to invoke the Lost Gods? Would he tell you? No. Would you help him? No. I'd burn his books. Why'd he adopt a stray cat? You don't ask a thing like that. No, not when there's no good answer, she said, her whiskers twitching. The Emperor had learned enough secrets from Renato to crush the rebellion. It would be a fair trade if the scientists could convince Zenobia to change sides. This was definitely better than pulling yourself up in a bucket.
Over beer, right?
The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had burned the reanimated witness to cinders. Renato was stunned. There goes my proof. These were scientists, not rebels, Zenobia said, upset. Why would he do this? I don't know. Let's go to the fleet and ask him. Yes. I'll meet you on the mountains. There's something I have to get first. But could he afford to meet her in the mountains? He'd given the Empire the location of the secret rebel base. They would need rescuing. Was he going to meet up with her? Wasn't it more important to rescue the Rebel Council from the almost certain Imperial attack? Why was he in this war anyway? Was it really to fight the good fight, or did he just want to see her again? One of these days, Renato thought, I should really figure out my motives before I pounce. Nah. Was it true? Was he on this adventure just to see Zenobia again? The Imperial heir was not an easy cat to see. Well, she'd ignored all his Kwanzaa gifts. And on the other paw, trying to get a date by joining a war against your intended was, let's say, pretty optimistic. But on the back paw, thought Renato, yes, it sounded exactly like him. Good. I'm so glad we had this little chat, he told himself. The sword felt even colder. Renato felt back for litter, but these islands were short on trash cans. He'd found a Superman issue #1 in mint condition in a jar he'd broken. He planned to keep breaking things until he had the whole series. He was sort of yanking his own chain, wasn't he? Don't look down, he told himself. Don't look down. There were a lot of dead ravens along the side of the road. Someone had rampaged through here on a killing spree. What had Zenobia gone to get? He had a chilling feeling it was the Iblis stone. Zenobia was level-headed. A stone could make anyone bloodthirsty. He could tell her style from the blazing of the dead bird. How about a floating platform that simply just goes to the top?
bicycle.
Had that door been opened before? Boy, someone has spent a lot of money for a graduation present. Bernardo wondered what he should do when he found Zenobia. What could he do if she had the Iblis Stone? He reached the summit, expecting no one. But there she was, steaming, pacing. "I'm gonna kill him," she said. "I'm gonna kill all his ravens, and then him, and then his family, and all the eggs and tadpoles. Then I'm gonna burn down their pond. Did you go and get the Iblis stone? You see, all these ravens I killed. So much power. Yeah. Great, Renato said. You really want power from a demonic rock? You want the stone, don't you? Not really. Good. I'd rather not have to kill you. He told her he loved her. That he wouldn't let the Iblis stone take her, even if he had to die for it. Well, he planned to tell her. Now didn't seem like the right time. She'd probably cool off in a bit. So he let her get in her ship and fly off. He rushed back to the Farfarer and followed her, keeping a healthy distance. Zenobia's ship was just visible through the clouds ahead. How could he reason with her? But he had to. The rebels were down for the count. No wonder. He'd betrayed the location of their base and then he'd abandoned them. And if she became Empress while she was in the grip of the Iblis stone, if she became Empress by murdering her father, she could still be a great Empress. But she could also be a nightmare Empress. She had to be stopped. There were more dead ravens along his path, some of them wounded in the back. He knew she could have easily talked her way past them, or clouded the little tiny raven brains with a spell. She was going out of her way to kill everything in her path. This wasn't Zenobia, not as he knew her. The mysterious sword from the east made you so fast you could catch a fly with your chopsticks. If that's what you really wanted. The rock felt hot in his hand. He could feel its secret power. So, his beloved was possessed by the spirit of a demon. That's what it meant to be a hero. To brave the darkness in your loved one's soul. To have faith there was still good in her. To help her out of that darkness, no matter what the cost. But what? What could he do? She'd kill him if he tried to take the Iblis stone from her.
Come on. No fox, no waiting.
This thing really needed a roof. the end of the trail of raven corpses was Zenobia. Her father was frantically rigging a strange apparatus wrapped around a glowing core. "Don't do it!" he shouted. "You'll hate yourself in the morning! Stay back!" She screamed in a horrible voice he'd never heard before. It froze him in his tracks. The Emperor stared at him. "Run," he told the toad, "or hop!" But he didn't manage to voice it, only think it. Zenobia stabbed her blade forward, and His Majesty fell dead. She began laughing hysterically. Or was she weeping? "Just walk away," she laughed at him. "I've no more use for you." There was something he needed to do, but he couldn't figure out what it was. So he did as he was told. As he walked away, he felt a chill in the world. The light in the sky seemed to dim. He didn't dare turn. He had a nagging feeling there was something he should have done just then. Something heroic. But he could not have taken the Iblis stone from her by force, and she would not have parted with it willingly. A cold wind blew from where she had been, but he still didn't dare turn. And then, an awful laughter filled the air, and all the torches and all the ships went out, and he realized what he should have done. But by then, it was too late to do anything. Oh, damn it. He'd lost again, and died. But there was burning Ubar behind him. He still had all his destinies ahead of him. But he'd learned another true thing. Zenobia still had feelings for him. He knew enough now, he thought. All these truths tumbling around each other in his head. There must be a way to puzzle the pieces together. If he used everything he knew, he could discover a new path to destiny. The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. Faster than before? And he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Reynardo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Reynardo had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Reynardo finally realized that Lapino was a traitor to the cause, and maybe Reynardo could use that somehow. Reynardo couldn't quite put his paw on when he'd realized Lapino was working for the Empire. He'd never exactly seen Lapino sending coded messages to the palace, but he was sure. The rabbit had been on too many disastrous missions where he was the only survivor, or where he accidentally missed getting on the boat that went down to the abyss in flames. If Reynardo could prevent Lapino from getting back to the fleet with all the intelligence he'd probably gathered, it might be worth the trip. How had they come to this? They'd been on so many adventures together. Lapino had talked Renato out of prison at least 4 times, and Renato had rescued Lapino from at least 2 lynch mobs. It would be fun to try out that one. And here was a handy workbench.
To traitors! Lord the Ravens.
He'd always felt that the rabbit resented him. Lapino was hilarious because he was so down on himself and everyone else. But behind the laughs, he wasn't a happy camper. Ooh, was this payback? Or did the Empire have his little white tail in a vice? Renato had been to a dungeon once where all the chests had teeth and eyes. It had been a short visit. Renato had been the terror of the sandcastles when he was 2. The new pathway made Renato curious. Every day he was getting better and better. landing everywhere from dropships. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, the Rabbit would give the Empire all the intelligence he'd been stealing from the rebellion, and they'd probably give him a medal. He'd have to be very careful about how he played Lapino. At the slightest hint of danger, the Mad Rabbit would take off like a rabbit.
Sorry, mustache, thought Renato.
Bloody and exhausted, Renato finally reached Lapino. The Rabbit was practicing shuffling his favorite deck. Now that he knew what the Rabbit was, there were a few things about him that Renato didn't find so amusing anymore. You sent me an urgent message saying that you're in danger. Oh, I am. The Ravens are coming. Now, I got a clever plan to kidnap Zenobia. Renato wanted to clap shackles on the Rabbit and shout, "You're a traitor, and I'm not falling for it." But if there was one thing Renato was sure of, it was that the core of the Sky Ripper was dangerous mostly to its user. If he could put it in the Emperor's hands, old Isengrim III might blow himself and his fleet up with it. Yes, that was it. Renato felt like a real hero, brave and smart. He told the Rabbit all about the Sky Ripper's God's Eye core. "I'll go get the core while you attack Zenobia," he told the Rabbit. "But wait, I've an even better idea. I'll get the core and you attack Zenobia," said the Rabbit. "Right, yeah, that is better," agreed Renato. Perfect. The traitor would make sure the Emperor got the core. Now Renato just needed the Emperor to use the core. If he could only get something that the Emperor wanted very badly. Zenobia. He could save her and bait the Emperor at the same time. Right. Now, all Renato had to do was fight his way through Zenobia's invading troops, sneak onto her ship and into her bedroom, and kidnap her without any of her dozens of guards alerting her. Then, he would rely on her love for him to convince her how evil her father was, so she'd run away with him instead of going back to her father, who was going to blow himself up. It did sound a little risky. But Renato had a feeling it would work out somehow. It always did. Raven can't fly, thought Renato. Ah, the road less traveled, thought Renato. How intriguing. Gogglers. Renato hated gogglers. It was almost impossible to sneak past them. If one didn't spot you, another one would. These things really slice like ham. Renato was halfway to Zenobia's encampment when Lupino showed up. He was disheveled and distraught. They jumped us. I barely got away. Oh, they got the core. Oh, it was all going according to plan, thought Renato. Now he just needed Zenobia on his side. Yes, that was even better. The Iblis Stone. Zenobia could get it. And then the Emperor would have to pursue them. Wait, no. The gem would corrupt anyone, even her. That's it, he thought. Even Lupino. Even though Lupino was already a traitor. It would turn him against his secret master, the Emperor. He would try to make himself Emperor. And the Emperor would have to defend himself with the core. Boom. He was a super genius. This is terrible, Renato told the rabbit. If only I had gone for the Iblis Stone. But now it's lost in enemy territory. He handed Lupino a map. It gives the bearer so much power. We can only hope the Emperor never finds it. What was that? Said Lupino. I think someone's following us. I didn't hear anything. Rabbit ears. You go on ahead. I'll check it out. And with that, Lupino hopped off with the map. If he ever had a castle, he was going to hide his stuff better. Reynardo slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. She was curled up on her bed. He'd forgotten how beautiful she was, how sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She was made of smoke, and he noticed he had a very solid blade to his throat. "Did you really think you could capture me?" Purred a familiar voice. "I just wanted to chat," said Reynardo. "Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? He needs a sacrifice, someone who truly loves him, to make a bargain with the lost gods." "That's a vicious lie. He wants to bring them back." Oh, that's crazy. Why would anyone... They could make him immortal. An eater of souls. And with that, her eyes widened. She understood. Reynardo told her how he had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred. How he had slept in a burnt village. At midnight, the Emperor's victims had come to him in his dreams to tell him of the hideous eldritch rituals they'd been sacrificed in. He could still see those kittens and puppies. Their wide, sad eyes, their moist noses. "You can't prove that." "I've got a witness at the observatory." He couldn't tell her, not yet, why he was really here. He didn't want her to be anywhere near the fleet when her father blew himself and Lupino up. So he told her about how the Emperor's obscene rituals had raised ancient artifacts out of the land. How he'd followed the appalling trail of the hideous horrors His Majesty had perpetrated for the sake of his own immortality. "Any of this ring a bell?" he said. "He told me it was all lies." "You've always known when I was lying. I always hated that about you," said Reynardo. The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Reynardo had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them. "Don't look down," he thought. Imagine if you built a house on one of these things. Oh, that would be amazing. It would be like having a boat. Fruit healing? Well, It was the latest fad, but it seemed to work.
Don't you think I'd know if my father started practicing black magic? Why? Would you join in? No! I'd destroy his books and I'd... Oh, God. Okay, you're not completely wrong. They've resurrected one of his victims. Well, I mean, look, it's not exactly alive, but it can talk. A true witness, she said.
That's my order, thought Renato. He was such a wit.
Somebody had been watching.
The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had taken special care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared at the carnage.
He didn't want me to hear the witness, did he? I guess not. What's your plan? She asked.
So?
Renato explained his brilliant gambit, sending Lapino to get the Iblis Stone, become super powerful and corrupted, provoke the Emperor into using the core against him, thus blowing up both of them, and hopefully the fleet too. "Let me visit your council," she said, shaken. "I want to help."
Could he really trust her?
He'd done it. He'd made Zenobia see how evil her father really was. He wished she didn't feel this urge to join in the rebellion. After all, he'd taken care of the Emperor, right? Yeah, but she'd always been conscientious like that. She told him she had to go somewhere first. So Renato gave her the location of the secret base, and they agreed to meet in the ruins. He had a very good feeling about this. What had Zenobia gone off to do? What was more important than meeting the rebel council? Had he made a mistake, sending her to the ruins? No. He knew they could trust each other. He could trust her because she never broke her word. And she could trust him because she could see right through him. Well, she'd probably be there well before him. She at least didn't have to fight her way through rainstorms of ravens. With materials like this, he could probably make a really nice pair of barbecue tongs. Or even a sword. Ooh, Renato loved to improve his gear. As he came around the bend, there was Lapino, unconscious on the side of the path. And Renato could smell a familiar, sweet, smoky scent. Who? Zenobia. It had to be. She never used a combat spell when she could use drowsy gas. That meant she had the Iblis Stone. What would it do to her? She hated her father now. She'd kill him for sure. The council wouldn't mind if she killed the Emperor, but murdering her father would destroy her. He had to get to whatever ledge she was on and talk her down from it. Sleep tight, thought Renato. long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good.
Any better dead than I'd have thought.
Who needed a doctor when you could eat fruit to heal?
Everyone in the council chamber was dead. Zenobia stood shivering in the courtyard, drenched in blood. Why? He managed. They started arguing with me. I lost my temper and I wanted their blood. Well, not me. The stone did. Why did you take it from Lupino? I had a plan. You had a stupid plan, she said. I'm going to go kill my father now. No, you can't. You'll just take his place. You'll become worse than him. Get out of my way, or I'll kill you too. You won't kill me, he said. And I won't let you kill the Emperor. Enraged, she raised the sword. You hate him too? He could sense the Iblis stone, yearning for his death. But she didn't strike. If you kill him, he'll destroy you. I know you. Shut up! She shouted, her sword trembling. I won't lose you again. Not for anything. Get away from me, he said, and he was very close. I can't lose you again. And he was in reach of her sword now. I hate him! I hate you too! I love you, he said for the very first time. And then she was weeping. He was holding her. The sword had dropped from her hand. He glanced at the Iblis stone. It was no longer the black of the void. It looked like coal. No. It glowed, like a cinder. It was crackling, burning, crumbling into ashes. You've always loved me, haven't you? She said. She was weak. The stone had taken so much from her. Always, he said. She staggered as he helped her up. Let me take you away. Where? The island of Avalon. The sisters will heal you. He'll follow us. Then we need the Farfarer, the fastest ship in the Empire. The Empire had seized his ship. They'd have to take it back.
There was a pleasant breeze coming through that door. Had it been closed before?
And there it was, his beautiful skycraft, the Farfarer. They would fare very far indeed, beyond the Empire, beyond the reach of the Empire, to the mystical island of Avalon. He didn't know exactly where it was, but he knew he could find it. And they would find peace there. Second star on the right, and straight on till morning, laughed Zenobia. And they laughed together for the first time in a long time.
Hey, did you guys ever learn to swing dance? Oh, well, too late. Say hi to Gravity for me. Renato had always wanted a flying carpet. This was more like a flying tabletop, but it would do. What did you do if one of these platforms stalled? A very clever engineer named Elon Muskrat had got his start making floating platforms. Not many people knew that. But they did not go unnoticed. Scout ships lifted off, and the long lance of the Imperial flagship. Bernardo turned downwind to gain speed. The Raven ships could pursue, but they couldn't close. The Farspeaker croaked, "Return her and live!" "Go sacrifice yourself," yelled Bernardo. "Then you won't have her either." On the flagship, the Emperor was readying some arcane weapon. It couldn't be. It was the core. A devastating beam lanced out of the flagship. Bernardo zigzagged wildly to keep the Farfare out of it. Now the Raven scout ships were closing the distance, and the beam was getting closer too. Then came a blinding flash, and the air was searingly hot all around him. There was a thunderous, deafening roar. He could smell burnt oak and burnt feathers and burnt flesh. But when he could hear and see again, they were alive and unhurt. And they were alone in the sky. Zenobia embraced him. They had done it. Through luck and through love, they had won the war. "Avalon, here we come," he said as he held her arms wide in the prow of the boat and let her feel its speed. "Maybe the real Avalon is wherever we're together," she said. And so, after a bit of an argument,
Reynardo and Zenobia went to one of the two Avalones. The one shrouded in mists, or the one in their hearts. But which one they went to, I'll never tell.
He'd done it. He'd forged his own destiny. Well, he hadn't actually done it. But he knew what he would do. Reynardo smiled at the book. He practically wanted to kiss it. The kid's sacrifice hadn't been in vain. He'd saved the book and saved the world. Reynardo owed him and his mother so much. Reynardo lowered the mainsail and let the Farfarer shoot forward in the breeze. Second star to the right, and straight on till morning. This time, he would win. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Reynardo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces deep. And then, this Emperor's horrific sacrifices had brought it back to the surface. Renato wasn't exactly sure how to use the legendary weapon. But surely, there must be some way to do it without provoking another catastrophe. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the Earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lupino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Renato felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Sky Ripper could destroy anything it touched, or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the Lost Gods, thousands of thousands had died. But Renato had been through wars. The only merciful war was a short one.
Awesome!
some reason, Renato remembered a fairy tale his mother had told him about a land where only the apes talked and animals went around without clothes. Puzzle. Renato loved puzzles, except when he couldn't figure them out. On the other hand, if there was a puzzle, it was probably meant to keep people away from something good. There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. Renato asked himself why he changed course to confront Zenobia. He'd no idea. Sometimes he would just do things, and he could never figure out why he'd done them. Usually, they worked out. After all, he was a hero. The truth is, though, he wanted to see her, wasn't it? It had been a dozen years since Swordfu School. He'd followed every rumor about her, every scrap of news. Not that he still loved her. After all, she was his enemy. No, it was solely because, know your enemy. All right, maybe he should stop pretending. He knew exactly how she felt about her. But their love affair always ended with a tragic death. Unless, maybe he could find a way to dodge tragedy. Surely he could, couldn't he? The city was burning, and there was no one to put out the fires. If somehow Zenobia survived her father and inherited his crown, what sort of empire would she be heir to? But he couldn't think about that, could he?
wonder what happens if I go that way.
Couldn't do worse with Zenobia than he'd done with the core, could he? The market. It was going to be full of gogglers, wasn't it? Oh, it would have been so much more fun before the war. When the worst thing that could happen to you was getting fleeced buying a rug.
Reynardo wasn't entirely sure how he was going to capture Zenobia. She'd be expecting him. And he didn't have Lupino to cook up a clever plan. Why was it again that he hadn't got the core? Maybe because the results tended to be disastrous. These streets were familiar. The swordsmith school was closed now. But he had been down that street 1,000 times. He knew that pub. He knew that alley. He knew the alley behind it much too well. No wonder Zenobia had chosen to invade this island herself.
Oh, kill the fox! Call it the ravens. Nobody said they were original.
Reynardo slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek. How soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She vanished. And he suddenly noticed he couldn't move except his mouth. In fact, soon he couldn't keep his mouth shut. He told Zenobia everything. Skyripper, the Iblastone, even where the secret rebel base was, until he was hoarse. It was some kind of truth spell. A talky truth spell. She called her father by Farspeaker Toad and filled His Majesty in. But why didn't he get the core? Croaked the Farspeaker in something like His Majesty's croak. Because I missed you, darling. Reynardo grinned. He doesn't even know why, frowned Zenobia. That makes no sense. It's a trap, shouted the Emperor. I'll meet you at the outpost, and I'll bring my interrogators. If Reynardo came face to face with the Emperor, maybe he could assassinate him. But maybe it would be smarter and safer to turn Zenobia against her father. You're lying, she said. Somehow you're lying. The spell hadn't worn off yet. He had to tell the truth. The trick was in making sure she wouldn't believe it. The core is perfectly safe, he said.
and he tried his hardest to sound sincere.
So is the Iblastone. In fact, I was trying to get them myself. Fine then, interrogators it is, she said angrily. I gave you a chance.
The Emperor's interrogators were not especially gentle, even by Weasel standards. Fortunately, Zenobia had locked him in the guest quarters on her ship, and she'd forgotten it had a toilet that, like all skyship toilets, could be vented into the abyss. This was not the sort of slippery fox he wanted to be. But just as they were about to land, he threw the latch, wrinkled his nose, and leapt through the open latrine. It was a short, safe landing. At least this part of the Nexus hadn't changed too much. Zenobia had been taking him to the Imperial outpost. She'd never expect him to go there by himself. Well, maybe she would. You never knew with her. There were stickers all over the platform for really hot lady foxes, with pictures and addresses and everything. Bernardo knew Zenobia, and Zenobia knew him. She'd suspected a trick. Now he'd vanished. She would probably guess that was his plan all along. Perfect. Maybe she wouldn't use the Sky Ripper. At least not without taking it to the scientists at the observatory first. Meanwhile, the Emperor would be coming to the outpost personally. This could be good. Giving the Emperor all of the rebellion's secrets hadn't been quite the disaster he'd thought. It had drawn the Emperor out of the safety of his fleet. Bernardo could sneak into the outpost, and in a few sword strokes, he could win the war. But the Emperor would be surrounded by his elite guard. Bernardo wondered if there was anything he could say that would confuse the old toad even more. Use words instead of his sword? Bernardo was face to face with the Emperor's bodyguard. They looked very tough, but the Emperor held them back.
Oh, where's my daughter?
And how would I know that? Renato grinned at him.
She lured me here so that you could kill me, didn't she?
Ah, don't be ridiculous, said Renato, trying his best to sound convincing. She loves you.
Oh, I knew it. The rabbit told me I couldn't trust her.
The Emperor hopped out the door. His phalanx of bodyguards retreated carefully. Renato heard someone call, "Arrest her!" as they left. Well, that's a job well done, thought Renato. Now the fleet will be in all sorts of disarray. But maybe he could find her in the mountains. She always used to go to the mountains to hide from the world. Maybe he could even turn her against her father. Or maybe he could reap the benefits of the chaos he had sown. It was time to report to the Rebel Council, and then launch the attack on a divided and very confused Imperial fleet. Renato was very proud of himself. He told the Empire everything, but now they didn't believe anything, and it looked like the Emperor didn't trust his daughter anymore either. There were some advantages to having a slippery reputation, weren't there? Renato wondered if he'd really fooled the Empire. He guessed he'd know soon enough. If the skies darkened with 1,000 dropships, then he'd know the Empire believed his map of the rebel base's secret location. They certainly seemed to be looking for it. There were ravens everywhere. But where weren't there ravens these days? In the Raven Room, talking to her son. You don't write. You don't call. Get it? Call? I just made that up. Maybe the Emperor would attack Zenobia. The Ravens, divided into two armies, would slaughter each other. And the rebellion could just show up and claim victory. The Council would be overjoyed that Renato had given away all their secrets. You never knew where the road would take you, thought Renato.
It was a bit windy up here.
Ooh, sparkly, thought Renato.
See? It was actually very fine weather. Except for the occasional shower of ravens. And no one was burning the ruins down with the mighty power of a god's eye. If the Empire believed anything he'd said, they certainly weren't showing it.
Can I borrow that?
Well, the eyes have had it.